This video gives women's perspectives on their relationships with God and religion. How are you all doing? This happens to a significant number of women in my experience shortly after a man has dumped or abandoned them. Are they acting in this manner in order to preserve their illusion, or has God taken the place of man in their lives temporarily? When they find another man or the same man, they go back to their previous behavior, which leads me to believe that they have not changed at all. I would like to address my feelings regarding religious ladies, specifically Christian women. They believe they can shove a crucifix up their couch and then wipe their vagina clean on God's sleeve, and that is how little respect most women have for religion in today's society. I would like to address these feelings. Many women also claim that they do not need feminism. The reason for this is that these women are typically young, thin, and pretty, in the same way that women who do not need religion are typically young, thin, and lovely. There is a rationale behind why church ladies tend to be elderly and either single or married to their families. In all my years of attending church, I've only ever spoken to one other woman there, and she was decidedly unattractive. On the other hand, there were many good-natured and principled men in attendance. Isn't it obvious why women turn into such good little Christians when their lovers dump them? A woman's self-esteem is damaged when she is dumped, and as a consequence, she is reluctant to go through the same experience again in the hopes that the next guy will not dump her. She is willing to go to any length, including becoming religious, in order to attract a man who will feel a tremendous amount of guilt if he ever leaves her. Religious men are also subjected to a significant amount of peer pressure from other men in their faith to remain with the women they are there with. If I were a woman, I would go looking for men at churches because I know the men there will be more committed to me and I won't have to worry about being dumped. If I were a man, I wouldn't go looking for a woman at church. However, for the vast majority of women, being unfaithful to their partners is not something that occurs. Instead, in most cases, it is the other way around. Consequently, an unattractive woman lives in constant fear of being unfaithful. Then they find the so-called religious males and control him. And that's when you start to see things coming back to the good old days. She suddenly lost interest in going to church unless it's Christmas or Easter because that's when everyone else attends, and if she isn't seen, it reflects poorly on her. So she goes to church to be a part of this so-called community. What this tells me about female chameleons is that they have no dedication to anything higher than themselves, which is especially true of so-called religious women. I have known men who were persuaded to abandon their faith by ladies they met at church. When I was in my early 20s, I dated a religious woman and she spread her legs faster than a clam in a pot of boiling hot water. She figured that religion was just bait that she was using as an excuse to strip down and try to lure me in with her holy vagina. She could simply replace one Christian faith with another centered around her sacred ass and remain a Christian. I quickly realized that religious women are the best opportunities, and that I should avoid them whenever it was at all possible to do so because religion is effective. When a woman meets a religious man, the man is typically young, idealistic, and probably sheltered, which makes it significantly simpler for the woman to deceive the man and have him fall for her deception. The religious man is a permanent replacement for the atheist who dumped her in the past, and hopefully this new guy isn't going anywhere either. The atheist was the one who dumped her in the past. The lack of religion in today's Western world could be one of the many reasons that men who go their own way are gaining more and more attraction. If a man believes in God, he is more easily manipulated by women. Men who go their own way are gaining more and more attraction. After all, if a man is not made to feel guilt and shame for his inability to reproduce, be fruitful, and multiply in accordance with the teachings of Christianity, then he will, by default, become more self-centered. If he does not have any children and does not feel guilty about pumping and dumping, it will be more difficult for many women to keep their high-status males. This is because men in other cultures have the option to move on from one woman to the next. If he does not have any children and does not feel guilty about pumping and dumping, it will be more difficult for many women to keep their high-status males. It is assumed that all women are subservient and well-behaved because of religion in Muslim countries where women all dress the same. But the majority of these ladies are clearly just going through the motions and claiming to have faith. This type of circumstance does not exist in Muslim countries where women all dress the same. I'm not sure where you live, Mr. Anonymous, but in Canada, the situation in which women go back to church after being dumped is extremely unusual. The vast majority of women in this country do not turn to religion after being dumped. They do not have a man in their life anymore, so they resort to using Tinder in order to find instant attention. In general, I do not include articles from the Huffington Post. However, I felt that this particular article should be included because of its significance. And there is a quote that says the overall change in the population of religious women in the United States over the past 50 years has been one of dramatic decline, which pretty much sums up the trajectory that religion is headed in throughout the majority of the Western world. The more secular the population of our society becomes in general, the more liberal our society becomes. I'm also certain that in the past, before being a lesbian was socially acceptable, Many women join convents to find like-minded women in an environment where no one would suspect them of being lesbians. The numbers for Catholic priests aren't any better. Apparently, there will only be 31,000 Catholic priests in the United States by the year 2020. There are currently more priests between the ages of 80 and 84 than there are between the ages of 30 and 34. Furthermore, only 50% of those priests will be female. After the Clone Wars, there will be more people on this planet who identify as Jedi than there will be Catholic priests. This is because Roman Catholicism is declining, which means that all other forms of Christianity are also declining at the same time. But getting back to nuns, it is estimated that their population will fall to around 40,000 by the year 2020, with only 21,000 of them being under the age of 70 in the United States. I'm not sure where you get your numbers or where you meet these women who have all of a sudden becomes religious and who are learning about Jesus for the very first time. Even though I do not identify as a religious person and have not done so for more than 15 years, I am aware that a decline in religious affiliation is correlated with a loss of moral values and behaviors. In the past, religion may have helped keep women and most men in check. But those days are long gone, and modern women have no reason to worship God given the way they live their lives. Because I had religious guilt at the time, I stayed with her for 2 years after I should have broken my virginity to her herb. This caused me to stay with her for 2 years longer than I should have. How many women, whether they practice religion or not, would choose to stay with their partners, even if their partner's health was in a terrible state? I wouldn't be surprised if very few people knew that the only reason I left her was because I realized that she didn't care about what I was going through and that she didn't even ask about it. I'm sorry, but that's all I have to say for today. Thank you for taking your daily dose of red pills, and please keep in mind that taking one red pill every day helps keep Satan at bay. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.